Folks, good afternoon. My apologies for the slight tardiness here. It has been a case of the Mondays at the Siggins household. I mean, at Proven Media Solutions, which are not the same thing. Um, my name is Dustin Siggins, and today on Crack on the Comms Code, we're going to talk about a little bit about 2025, a lot about 2026, but also about Friday's jobs report, which showed a very few number of jobs added, and last year being the worst year since 2020, and before that, 2010, for the number of jobs added. What does that mean for the communications industry? What are employers looking for? And what should people seeking to become employees look at in their next job? How to approach the personal branding, how to approach the interview process, and how to prepare to deliver a home run in your next job. And so with me are Brooke and Jessica, recruiters, executive recruiters, and Mike, who is an economist. They're going to introduce themselves, kind of give a lay of the land on what they're seeing, and then we're going to dive right in. Please do bring your questions in the comments. We're going to try to answer live. If I'm looking down, it's not that I'm taking a nap. It's that I'm actually looking at your questions. So, Brooke, Jessica, Mike, take it from here.
Thanks for having us. Um, I think one of the things you just noted was the jobs report was negative, and I remember last time we were on here, Mike said one of my favorite quotes of all time, which is when we look at jobs reports, it's about the past, and
Mm-hmm.
I like to worry about what's going on right now. And so I see 2026 as an opportunity for more communications jobs. I think people are leaving their jobs and taking new ones, and comms teams are finally getting the budgets to grow their teams.
Right. Hi, I'm Jessica Bayer. I lead the corporate affairs executive search function here at DHR Global. And I agree. I mean, I think, we're coming off of 2023. Every year has been better than the last, and we expect that to happen in 2026. I think the difference, communicators are expected to do more than they've ever been expected to do in the past and understand all function of the business. So a lot of comms people are now working across government affairs, or they're also working across investor relations, or they're all also working across marketing. So I think we'll continue to see more of that interaction and that kind of combining of functions and roles. But the role is extremely critical. The corporate reputation of a brand is extremely critical. Navigating the political landscape and helping your CEO and board members understand what that looks like from a company reputation standpoint is critical. So we'll continue to see investment in the functions. It may be at different levels than we've seen in the past, but definitely an investment in corporate reputation for sure.
Good. I'm Michael Feuz again. So, economist. I'm at ITR Economics. And yeah, the jobs report kind of in line with what we were expecting. New jobs being added, or the employment, professional hiring in the private sector, we're expecting it to be soft. But by soft, I mean still growing, still adding jobs, just at a slower rate. But we see 26 as being a better year economically than 25. 25 was, just as Jessica said, building off of the previous year, 24. And it was slightly better than 24 and 25, kind of keeping that going. So as the year ticks on, things will continue to heat up and things will swing back into a more active labor market. It's still a very tight labor market. There's still more job openings. Um, Outpacing people act well. It's about 1-to-1 ratio on currently, but it's going to swing in the other direction where it's going to be back to an employee or job seeking market. Right now, it's a little advantage, I would say, very slightly to the employers, but overall, there's more positivity. We'll get farther into that.
Let me ask you about that, Mike. Let's dive right into that as the major pain point here is Jessica and Brooke, and the last time we spoke back in September, you laid out that there was a lot of overhiring in 2020, 2021.
Mhm.
And as someone who's worked a little bit in-house as a freelancer and then running my own agency, 2024 was awful. 2024 was terrible, it seems like across the board in the comms industry. Last year, tariffs seemed to create a lot of uncertainty in a lot of spaces. What is going to happen? And yeah, there was growth, but a lot of people in the communication space don't feel that. So, Mike, from that macro perspective, what do you mean things were soft, but we still saw growth? Especially when what do we need? 150,000 jobs as replacement. We've had a lot less than that last year.
Yeah, so overall, I mean, you're right, Dustin. 24 really across different sectors that we saw, and some felt it way more than others. So it all kind of depends on where you were to how what you were exactly feeling. But it was very much a scraping of the bottom, is the way I described it. And 25 was a growth year, but it was a very mild to moderate growth year. And then add on top of that all the uncertainty from, we can tie it mostly to tariffs. Like we watch very closely the economic policy uncertainty. But that uncertainty drives a lot of hesitancy of investment from businesses, the folks that are doing the hiring. They're not going to invest the capital, whether that be into labor, bringing on additional folks to expand their capacity, or investments into technology or equipment or whatever it may be. If they feel uncertain about the future, we're seeing it tick down. It's still a little elevated. And we see overall businesses positioned to invest, but so that expectations with business confidence, we should get more. But yeah, you're right. 24 was tough. 25, folks thought it was gonna feel better. The data shows that it was, but it still probably felt a little like, man, we're kind of in this sluggishness. It was still very competitive across job markets. I mean, I would see it just day to day with how many applicants, whether it be my own firm that I work, we would get a lot of applicants, and it would be a challenge to shift through those applicants. Or when you get on LinkedIn or something, LinkedIn's always saying, oh, these jobs of interest, and sometimes you see like 137 people have applied, and the job has been open for 24 hours, and you're like, who is applying? Uh,
Well, again, Brooke and Jessica, I forget which one of you said on our prep call earlier this afternoon that there's a lot of people trying to go across industries rather than dialing it to where they really can master the niche. I forget which one of you said it, but can you dial into that a little bit as we're talking about growth here? But it's hard if it's still a soft market. How tightly should people be focusing on where they're most comfortable, most knowledgeable?
Yeah. I mean, regarding like what Mike said in terms of like industry expertise. So we are seeing different trends where industries are having more job opportunities. So if we look at last year, tech, healthcare,
Mhm.
energy, oil and gas, highly regulated industry, financial services, highly regulated industries saw a lot of growth. So I could see if you are more of a consumer comms person feeling the pain. But what's
Mhm.
happening from a job posting standpoint, which Mike also mentioned, is because there are still a lot of people in the market, when a job's posted, 150 people is a low number in 24 hours. 1,000 people could apply for a job, and it's really hard for internal recruiters to go through 1,000 applicants. So they don't, and they just go to LinkedIn or they go to their network or they go to an executive search firm and bring in some help. And the people that are applying are not applying because it's the right fit. They're applying because they need a job, and that's a problem. So I was talking to someone today whose entire background was in financial services, and she really wanted to make the transition to tech. Well, it's really hard when I still think it's a company's market, an employer's market where they can choose, who they want to hire someone from completely outside the industry when they're looking at 10 resumes in front of them from within the industry. So I suggested instead of trying to like dramatically go from financial services to technology, what about fintech? So the fintech company can see the value add that you bring with financial services experience, and then you get to learn the tech piece, and it makes sense. When you apply for a job, when you're interviewing for a job, it has to make sense. And gone are the days of just being like, I'll learn it on the job. You have to already have the experience. You have to have the proven track record if you're going after a job because there's just so many people on the market. The person next to you will have that track record if you don't.
Yeah, and I think in a market where we are now, industry expertise always goes very, very far. When there are, the heavy hiring days of 2021, people were more open to bring in different backgrounds on different expertise on their teams. Now, I truly believe different perspectives really help, but in a tight hiring market, employers are going to go with what they know, and they're going to go for someone who can immediately be ramped up. I hear a lot from our clients. We need someone plug and play. We need someone who knows the industry. There's no time for ramp up. They need to be ready to go on day one.
Yeah, we're seeing. I see that, and I get to talk to across the U.S. industries. So from your manufacturer to your oil and gas person to your business consultant firms that we're working with. very closely, and there's definitely a shift to quality control with labor or with who you're hiring. Back, as you mentioned, that 2021, we were seeing like a 2-to-1 ratio of like open jobs to of people actively looking for work. So that was the employee market. We saw a very high quit rate. We saw, 25% people were getting leaving jobs and getting a 25% boost to their pay. It's flipped. It's about a 1-to-1 ratio, and businesses are now no they were at one point, companies and employers were just kind of throwing bodies at the problem or the demand and hoping they can maintain the quality control. Now they're in a little bit of a, we'll call it, maybe it feels like a luxury. It's still, when I zoom out, it's still a very tight labor market, but now they're like, let's get quality under control. Let's make sure who we're bringing in has the skill sets already. We want a higher skilled employee. I want less time. Labor is very expensive, and we're starting to see erosion of profitability out there. It's still very healthy in the US, but we're seeing those margin pressures. So businesses are thinking about how expensive labor is, and they're like, when do I get the ROI on this person I'm adding? They want a higher skilled worker who has experience, that they don't have to have a 9-month ramp up before they start getting a return on
Yeah.
that very expensive salary and plus benefits.
Yeah,
Well,
and
actually, go ahead, Brooke. I'm sorry.
I think now when you are hired for a job, it's still it's so important, to get the job, you have to be so prepared and really go deep on the company. But before you start the job, you need to go in there with a true understanding of the client, if it's an agency, or the company, because when you are hired, they truly expect you to provide value from day one. There's no more of this like, hey, we're going to use these first couple months just to get you ramped up and get you set. You're expected to come in knowing a lot and instantly be able to be, valuable to your team and your company.
There are a couple of questions here that actually address kind of the opposite of what Brooke and Jessica, of what you've been saying here. And I'm going to combine questions from three different people and try to summarize into one big question. So there's only easy ones on this conversation. Amber said she wanted to ask about ghost jobs. So let's talk about ghost jobs briefly. And then I want to dive into some stuff that Kate and Keith laid out. So, especially maybe on LinkedIn, Jessica and Brooke, how often are you seeing what's called ghost jobs?
I mean, I think
And how problematic is that from the job seeker standpoint?
I think there's a lot of ghost jobs out there. I think internal recruiters, can sometimes to create a pipeline, put jobs out there. They may think this job is going to happen and then the headcount's taken away. So a lot of times companies are putting job specs up that maybe were real once, but are not no longer real. And it's frustrating for candidates to apply for these jobs when they're actually not there. But that's something that has happened for a long time and will continue to happen.
Yeah, same if there's an internal candidate that maybe they've earmarked for this role, they'll still post the job, see what else is out
Mhm.
there, but the internal candidate may still get it. I mean, it doesn't mean it's a ghost job, but it means there's like likely already a plan. You don't know. And I know it's probably frustrating, but Brooke and I don't post ghost jobs. So we don't post our jobs. So
No, of course. I just we're obviously aware of any sort of trends in that world.
yeah.
Couple of questions here from Kate and Keith, and I'm gonna try to make one question out of their several. Kate posted that many jobs seem to be junior from a salary and title, with the expectation that individuals will walk on water. And then Keith mentioned how, Mike, you mentioned business investing. Is that investing in people or systems like AI that may not result in job openings? So, in other words, when we're talking about hiring and comms, are we seeing a rise in junior positions with the expectation that maybe you're going to use AI to supplement what would have previously been a more senior capability role?
I see it more at we want to bring in a director or a senior director to run communications and do everything that a chief communications officer will do, just not with the title. I've seen that more than bringing in a junior person that we think can do everything.
Okay. Brooke?
I agree. And then I think, every communications team should be using AI to improve efficiency and productivity. If they are, hiring people, when you're getting hired, you're expected to do more with less. And AI is a tool that can help you with that. But I think it is very safe to say that when you do take a job or get hired, you're going to expect it to do more than just what is on your job spec.
Then, Mike, when it comes to business investing, there's a big concern in the comms industry about, you know, communications is too often seen as a nice to have, not a bottom line investment. And so with the advent of AI, how much does that, when you talk about business investing in labor, how much of that is being affected in the macro sense by AI? And then what are you seeing in the comms industry specifically?
I mean, AI, as I think it was Brooke who just said it, is going to be a multiplier. Um, it's going to be it's not a job replacer. It's going to be the multiplier that takes each worker and makes them that much more productive. But that is going to lower the need for labor growth at organizations. Like I want to protect the 10 folks I have in house or the 20 or the 100 that I've invested a lot of capital and training and they have institutional knowledge. But their mindset is what can I do to avoid hiring that next person because of how costly it is to hire a person. So I think on the person who's the job seeker, that's why it's so essential to stand out. And it's standing out with your resume or your skills that start the conversation, but then it's those intangibles that separates two people. It's AI cannot make human connections. AI cannot communicate effectively to another human person and make them feel heard, seen, spoken to. Like those, if I can bring technical skills to a job and my ability to connect on a human level, like that's what separates two very smart people with one person who has intangibles. From a business investment standpoint, I mean, the human mind is going to remain the most important resource for innovation, for creativity, for differentiating yourself. But they're it's AI, I think, in the longer run too, is going to equip the ability for quality to help with quality control because you're going to be able to do more with less. So they will impact those junior folks more, right? It's bringing in the director skilled person and then multiplying them with some of that AI so you don't have to bring in the three. So if you're a junior level person, this is going to be more of a challenge moving forward. But it's, if I would, I'm still, I think, on the younger side, but I guess I'm slowly keep aging up. But if I was talking to someone, in college who really had a passion for comms, really wanted to get into something, I am probably telling them like you have got to take every unpaid internship you can find your 4 years in college and build a resume and make connections and network. And you need to take classes that teach you how to speak publicly. You need to be presenting in front of your classes. It's so when you go out there and you start interviewing, you already know who you're interviewing with, giving you a leg up, and the folks that anyone that you want to break into, they can tell that you have that difference. So it's short, long and winded answer, Dustin, but businesses are
Well,
investing in people, but they wanted to they want one person to do the job of three without burning that person out.
and that ties to another question, which again, Jessica and Brooke, this is a little bit of if you need to take a moment to think about your answers on this one, totally get it. Charles said that he has a lot of experience, but he's seeing roles for more people with fewer years, but he's getting, he has 15, 20 years, and he's seeking job openings that are lower than that. He's not getting a call back. His concern is, he literally said in the comments, is being a white male working against me. On the flip side, someone else pointed out that Fortune noted there was a 5x gain among men in the workforce last year versus women. So it does seem like there are some concerns about just potential discrimination. Are you seeing any sort of increases in either sex, or you talk about directors being asked to do the role of the CCO? How do these concerns about ageism, or Mike, they want to get a college grad who's very, seems qualified on, has their potential versus actual experience in the field? How do these sort of more controversial factors, are you seeing them play out?
I
I mean,
think you can go first, Jessica. I just spoke.
oh, well, I
All
think,
right,
I
but
mean, all those issues are real. People are biased when they're hiring, whether they intend to be or not. That's happening, and ageism is real in the communications industry.
I do think that, like, on a job description, though, so I have a job right now that I'm working with, it's 12 plus years of experience. The person that we're going to hire in the role is probably going to have 25 plus years of experience, but it's written like that in case there's an absolute rock star who has 12 years of experience and they need to meet those requirements. So rarely are jobs posted that say 20 plus years of experience. It usually like is 15 plus. So I would just, take that with a grain of salt. One thing that goes back to like this question and also the ghost jobs question, and we talked about this in September, but it's worth bringing up again. Applying for a job or looking for a job is quality over quantity. And any job that you're interested in, you have to fight to find your way in the door. Applying online's a black hole. So you find someone who works there, get the scoop on the job. Find someone who knows someone who works there, get the scoop on the job. You will find out then Is there an internal candidate? Is this a ghost position? If you do your due diligence, you dig in and you try and find out more. So take the extra effort and find out about a job to figure out holistically if you're a good fit on paper, but then also at the company and what's going on, and then get your resume physically into someone's inbox. So if you take a little bit of extra time, you can find out more and discover what's happening with these job postings. Um, I haven't had a client in a year and a half ask about gender, sex, or age. So I don't know if folks are just getting legally better at it or that hasn't been an issue that I've faced recently.
So let's dive more now into, we kind of have the macro sense, right? So a lot of one of the episodes of the show we did toward the end of last year was on how CCOs and related people should think through the use of AI. One person did ask in the comments, okay, let's talk more about that AI thing. That's not a direct quote. Person didn't say the word thing. But what was the actual question here? Bear with me. A lot of people are asking great questions. Keep them coming. I can't guarantee we'll get to all of them. What are AI skills or comms teams looking for generally? Mike Schelling asked that question. I'd like to put a little bit of a different spin on it. What is the C-suite looking for when they're hiring for senior communications roles? And how do those expectations go downstream in a more mid-range and junior roles for AI specifically?
I think when the C-suite is hiring right now for the comms positions that I'm seeing, what they are looking for is the person when the accident or incident happens, they're the person they want to call for advice. They can actually give the advice and then they can actually do the work. So they have to be a strategic leader, but they have to be willing to execute. You know, people who need giant teams to make a phone call, that doesn't work anymore. Um, Every team uses AI in its own way. There's a lot of wonderful content on LinkedIn. And there was an article the other day, my wonderful client from Verkada, Alana O'Grady, wrote about how she's using AI with her team. And so there's a lot of I love it when people do that and they are not gatekeepers, comms leaders, about how they're using AI to improve their comms team. So I think there's a lot of content you could find out there on LinkedIn, but how are comms using it? It's specifically to their organization.
Yeah, and the one question I think every person interviewing needs to be able to answer is how have you used AI to improve efficiencies on your team? And that's like period, end of
Oh,
story.
right.
You
That's
have
a
to
good
be able
point.
to show. And I think about that like if I'm going to interview and someone asks me that today, do I have a good answer? If not, I better be using AI in a different way and making sure I do have a good answer and I'm actually utilizing it.
Across clients that I get to consult for, and really from what I understand is out in the market, because I go to a lot of different associations and trade show conferences, is there's still 95 to 99%, probably closer to the 99, a vast uncertainty on how to use AI effectively or appropriately. Still a lot of discovery, not getting a lot of ROI. So as a candidate, if you're looking to present your skills in AI, it's a sense that you have to present that I understand it. I'm actively looking to learn more, but it's almost bringing that sense that like I'm going to bring a perspective with leveraging AI that's not on your team because a lot of businesses are still feel like we're in catch up. We're not getting the ROI we want yet on it. We're afraid we're throwing spaghetti at the wall, not even knowing what's sticking or not yet. And it can be if you don't use it appropriately, it becomes a cost inhibitor to a team. So as a candidate, just showing that you're doing some continuous learning with AI, I think will give you a leg up.
And folks, I just posted in the comments, did a show with Trish Nicholas and with Samantha Reel late last year. So a link to that conversation, which was all about AI in the strategic comms world, is now in the comments if you want to look at that for that specific conversation. Another thing I'm hearing a lot from people who are looking for work at the end of last year is they do want to dial into what the specific company is looking for, but with that uncertainty on how to use AI, is that a replaceable, not replaceable? Can you cover for that with something else? If you're more experienced at LinkedIn and how that can be a new way for the C-suite to speak to to their target audiences and be thought leaders. Or if you know the industry really well, you could at least show that you're willing to learn. I'm not great at AI, but I know how to think strategically about tools and people and sort of those traditional strategic principles. Can that overcome a relative lack of experience in AI?
I
in
think
today's market.
I mean, I think it could. I would not go into an interview and say, "Hey, I'm not really good at AI." That I would caution people to do that. I'm super interested in AI. I'm learning every day new ways to improve efficiency with AI. But you just gave two examples of skill sets that are really, when you're in an interview, you need to figure out like, what is your secret sauce? What are you good at? What are your superpowers? And how are those powers and those skill sets going to affect the job and allow you to do it. So having for
Mhm.
examples like that is absolutely what you need to do in the interview process. And so I don't think you should look at it as like you're finding examples to cover up for skills you don't have. You're actually doing really a self-examination on what your strengths are, and you're able to articulate that.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cover from like an ethical perspective. I just mean if I'm less experienced here, but I can say, hey, look, I haven't had a lot of experience with AI. I've used it in these ways, but I'm strong here, and I'm looking
Yes.
to incorporate AI with this kind of operation that I'm interviewing for.
Sure.
Yes, I think, and again, I prefer to leave it positive. I'm getting
Yeah.
really excited about AI. I'm learning more every day.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And,
Okay.
but
I know everyone stretches the truth when it comes to resumes, but I don't. There are very few true AI experts in the world, which means
Mhm.
be bullish in your AI capabilities and the work you've done. Don't be afraid to say somewhat of an expert, because guess what? You probably are, and you don't realize it because everyone's just learning, minus a few folks that all are making 300K plus out in Silicon Valley.
But what you're able, like back to knowing how to use AI for efficiencies in your bubble, your workflow, your functional area of expertise. If you're interviewing for a CCO job and the CEO is asking you that he or she wants to know what you're doing within your function, you have to become an expert on that. You have to. It's table stakes. You have to. So if you're not strong right now in AI to improve efficiencies in your function, get stronger and smarter about it. That's one you can't fake.
One of the things that we talked about in September, and I'll share my screen in a couple of minutes to show an example of what I've done. We talked a lot about positioning yourself on LinkedIn. Lori Gray said here to get noticed by recruiters on LinkedIn, you also need to make sure your profile is optimized for the new algorithm. It's critical. Brooke and Jessica, you would know better than I. How important is that? One, and then how important is it to also have the content on there on a consistent basis? What is the minimum that you're wanting to see? And what's the style? I think a lot of people wonder, I don't know what to say. And I'll get into how we've used LinkedIn, and that I think can be a good case study for even if you're just looking for a job. It's not that different. Everything is sales, whether you're looking for a client or you're looking for a job. So, Brooke and Jessica would love to see what you're seeing again on the importance of the profile, how often people should be engaging on their own, thought leadership and commentary on LinkedIn, and what style tends to be most attractive to recruiters.
So I think when a recruiter sends your resume in, an internal external recruiter, they're also checking your LinkedIn profile. So your profile has to be updated. It has to be mapped back. You need to have a headshot that you are comfortable with. You need to have, your banner needs to be professional. You need to have the jobs that are on your resume. Um, you know, my clients like to see people active on LinkedIn. What that means is individual for each person. I would not encourage you to do tons of thought leadership if that is not kind of in your wheelhouse and you're just posting things or using chat GPT just to post. But you can start in a more natural way for you. Start liking people's posts. Start following people within the industries you're interested in and see what they say and engaging in conversations in comments. I would say engaging politely in conversations because no one wants, trolls, and everything is recordable. But if you feel like you have something to say that you think people would want to hear, then I think that absolutely post. But I would encourage people not to post just because to post or because you think you have to post twice a week. What feels natural to you, and I always want to go back to LinkedIn as a professional networking tool. There are other social media apps that aren't for the professional, so you want to keep that in mind and that should be in your intent, and everything you're posting has a professional nature to it.
I couldn't agree more. And then back to what Brooke said about like know your expertise and create a niche for what you're talking about. If you're talking about something that everyone else can talk about, it's not relevant. What are you an expert in? What do you know that no one else knows that they may be interested in learning about, and become an expert in that space? Like know what you're talking about and what you're saying. There is a lot of AI slop out there. We're like, write me a LinkedIn post, and it goes. You can tell. It's there's got
You
to be
can tell.
personal anecdotes. There's got to be something where it feels real, and then make sure your profile is searchable. So when an internal recruiter gets frustrated when they see 1,000 resumes and 955 are not right, they just go to LinkedIn and they're going to search. So make sure you're searchable and you can be found on LinkedIn with the keywords of the job that you want next. So, if you want to go and do this job, make sure all of the things about, if you want to go to a tech company, make sure your LinkedIn profile reads heavy tech. So make sure it's like clear and there's no guessing.
Yes, and then I think it's a good idea to constantly be updating your LinkedIn profile, just in, switching words around, just be active, because I find that with the algorithm, people show up in searches more from a recruiter when they are more active.
When you say more active on the profile, do you mean like in my case, I get published twice a month? Do I just add that to my op-eds once a month to the show the thought leadership, or do I have to change around my job descriptions of past employment situations? What are the level of changes
I
that should
mean,
be happening and how
I
frequent?
think you're a special case because you are active and you're posting. So everything you're posting should go to your featured section. So you're gonna have to go in and click that. But if you're
Sure.
not posting that much, by staying active, again, like people's stories, comment, but just like switch words around. Just, once or twice a week, at least be on your LinkedIn profile and just be wordsmithing it. I mean, you don't have to make big changes, but I feel like the algorithm rewards people who actually make
Mhm.
any type of change.
And I want to dial into a couple of examples here on my LinkedIn page because I we've put a lot of work into LinkedIn for my company. And again, the principles I think carry over into finding a job. This is something I did just before the holidays. For context, my target audience, we're an earned media firm. Our target audience is the communications executive, the communications agency executive who needs to fill a gap. So I can't just talk about PR generally because everyone's going to look and say, "Oh, you talk about writing a press release." Great. Because everyone in my target audience knows how to do that. What I wanted to show here in this post is that I understand newsjacking, how it works. I understand what doesn't work. And then I laid out a few examples of sort of real situations, including one where we got a mental health op-ed up with a Christmas theme. And it landed at a very prominent outlet in that our client's target audience. This kind of post is not easy to do, but I suspect for a lot of people, if you were to spend a few minutes every morning scanning the news cycle in your target audience, you would see something and go, oh man, they avoided a crisis by doing that. That's what Drew Kerr does really, really well. Jennifer George at the Aspen Group did a great job of looking. I think The Gap had done a phenomenal job of tackling a cultural issue. And she pointed out how they had done it. So being aware of the news cycle, I think, can often allow you to take a principle like newsjacking in my case, and then bring in an example that I did in the past to Brooke and Jessica, what you said about using past examples to prove current value. And then I
I
also,
also think this is great because it's short and it's to the point, and I
yeah.
can quickly scan it and get relevant information. So I give you an A+ on this test.
Well, and I have to give all the credit to Jalissa and Molly, which I'll get to that in 1 second, because last year the algorithm, compared to 2023 and prior, really shrank reach. And I've been bashing the algorithm like everybody else. But Noah Greenberg did an analysis of his performance last year. My colleague Jalissa, who runs our sales backend, actually did an analysis and found that even though our reach was down, our engagement was up by 50% last year. And compared to the prior year, we did a full 2025 analysis. And what we found was that not only did our sales grow on LinkedIn, like literally had a 75% sales growth, but the engagement was up. That means we weren't just relying on a couple of wins. It means we were relying on a widespread growth of brand credibility. And back to some of the stuff you were talking about, best practices, Brooke and Jessica, the focus of this was we didn't get distracted from our content pillar and our
Mhm.
audience pain points and solutions. We scheduled posts. Allegedly, that hurts you on the algorithm. but we found that it freed me as the primary sales face of the company to do other things like engaging people's content. And if you're in this industry, the comms industry, and you're trying to get into tech or healthcare, you should not be looking at my content because I'm not your target audience. That's, I think, one of the big mistakes people make on LinkedIn. It's fun to engage people who know what you're talking about, but they may not be the person making the hiring decision or even in dotted line involvement. If you're in tech, you probably want to be engaging with the people who are going to make the hire, and they may know nothing about comms. So you have to think through that when you're developing your content and with whom you're engaging on LinkedIn.
Well,
And
it's like classic. You have to know your audience.
well, yes. And I think it's easy to forget that on LinkedIn because it is so much more fun in some ways to just speak within the choir. But that's not who's probably going to be hiring you necessarily. And then
Have you ever boosted content?
we did 3 or
Did it
4
work?
boosts last year, and it didn't work well enough
Okay.
to justify the money or the time that was taken away from me engaging with people directly. The other thing is I really strongly encourage people to use op-eds. In fact, Jessica, I've interviewed you very recently. Brooke, I think I've interviewed you twice for op-eds that I write under my name, right? That gets me into O'Dwyer's PR Daily if you're targeting healthcare and for those outlets or tech or whatever. But interview people, reach out to people who don't know they're a prospective employer. And maybe ask that person, interview them for a thought leadership piece that you're writing. You're going to be seen as a gold mine for them. You got them free press. They're going to see how you work, how your brain works, how your writing style works. If writing opinion and thought leadership is a strength of yours, I would take advantage of that and get yourself in front of people in a new way off this platform because you don't want to be stuck. If LinkedIn goes down, you don't want that to be your whole brand recognition.
Love it.
I'll get off my LinkedIn high horse here, but I would like to take a few minutes to kind of discuss that because I think it's really important as people are trying to build that credibility. Mike, you haven't said anything in a while. Anything to add?
No, that was actually interesting. I'm always trying to keep my LinkedIn up to date, more so because I'm so public facing in my role. But I mean, the tips and tricks there, and I mean, I help a little bit sometimes review candidates coming in for that are going to be peers with me in my role at my business, and it's you do first place you go is LinkedIn. You do get your first impression of someone on LinkedIn. And first impressions are hard to change once they're established.
Let's dial into something that was asked a few different times is that 2 things. One, want to finish up on LinkedIn here. Anita said, the content I'm seeing on LinkedIn from Comms Pros is predictable and boring. Everyone's trying to game the algorithm. That was actually a year and a half ago, a bit of my experience. Same with AI slop, as Emily Rogan mentioned. What I found is that the more I engaged with people who are very serious communicators, I never see the AI. That's not true. There's one person. I need to unfollow him. I never see the AI garbage. I never see people who are just out there spewing. I see very serious people across agencies, consultants, and in-house roles and job seekers, because that's what engaging in the comments does. It make you tell the algorithm what to show you by you're connected with and by where you're commenting. If you see that, the algorithm will see that and respond to it. So it's really important that if you're not happy with what you're seeing, take a look at what your activity is. And that is probably the problem here. As much as we all don't like the algorithm, the way it shrank the reach, it does its job. And I know this because 3 times in the last year and a half, I've gotten distracted. And all 3 times it punished me for 7 to 20 days. When I got back on track, I started seeing again what I wanted to see.
I think that's interesting. I like that you haven't seen a lot of sloppy AI stuff because there was a period maybe 2 or 3 months ago I felt like every post I was reading was it sounded like ChatGPT, but I feel like it's gotten better.
No, Keith, it's not
Maybe
you.
I like that. Maybe I was distracted. I'm back on track.
Well, maybe we're looking for a specific type of client, and that was the attraction of that audience
Totally.
on LinkedIn. So speaking of different comms that we were talking about earlier, Keith asked, and other people have brought this up, are you seeing a collapse of sort of internal and external comms? Are you seeing different openings within different types of functions? Marketing, corporate communications, government affairs related comms roles, PR, internal comms. Where are you seeing the openings, Brooke and Jessica? And then Mike, do you have any data on sort of where specific human investments, labor investments are being made in the communications world?
I think it depends on the size of the company. You know, larger companies have the opportunity to have these siloed and specialized roles, and then
Sure.
smaller companies are relying on folks to just work across several functional areas of expertise. But that being
Yep.
said, even if you are an internal communications expert, you shouldn't only be an internal comms expert. Be an internal comms expert and an executive comms expert, or figure
Mm.
out like where, or maybe get more involved in internal comms and financial comms. Like start expanding beyond whatever your expertise is if you have one specifically now,
Mhm.
just to make you more diversified for the future, or if you ultimately want that CCO role. But I think it just depends on the size of the company. But we are expected to do more with fewer people, so everyone needs to get up to speed.
Yeah, I've seen an uptick I've seen personally, or I saw in 2025 was policy comms roles. I filled a lot of those, and there are a lot of companies were trying to obviously staff up on their policy comms team. Um, Internal comms, I saw a huge uptick in new hires probably 2 to 3 years ago. So I didn't see a lot of internal comms roles most recently, but that's because people were staying in their jobs. And then, external corporate communications is also always needed as well. Um, but I've seen growth all around, and again, I want to continue to be optimistic that 2026 will keep improving in comms hiring across the board.
Mike, macro data on different types of comms roles and positions.
I mean, that's getting the micro. The one thing is that I do see in the comms is that there's two sides to the coin. It's still in a bit of a decline for the job openings, yet it remains above pre-pandemic levels. So the overall market, when you zoom out, is still larger, coming off the sugar rush a bit, and it probably is one that um, I mean, not to go back to the AI, I think we've covered it, but it's more susceptible to impact on AI, but more at the
Right.
lower level. A high-skilled comms person cannot be replaced. That is a human skill, but they're also, if you're a high-skilled comms person, you're worth the money.
Mhm.
You're not cheap, and rightfully so. So I think that speaks to, trying to raise the low, what's the lowest bar in the ladder is going to move up a little bit. Um, but the overall market's still larger than we were before we entered the pandemic. But there was that sugar rush of funny money that drove up demand, and now we're kind of finding the new baseline, I would call it.
I agree with that data completely, because if you're looking at 2019, and I don't know, Brooke, if you saw this as well, I started getting a huge push for marketing roles, and I was concerned about the communications ability to make an impact and have a seat at the table, because everyone wanted to hire marketing who could do comms as well. And it was because you were able to show data and KPIs and like actual numbers, and comms wasn't able to do that. Comms can do that now, so it's very different, and corporate reputation matters more. And as Brooke mentioned, policy comms is huge because the intersection of government affairs and comms is critical in this administration and in all administrations moving forward now. And
Yep.
that's just been uncovered. So I totally believe those numbers. And I do think it's better this year, last year, than it was in 2019.
Yeah.
A lot of questions just kind of came in here. Let's tackle, we got about 13 minutes left. I'd like to make sure we tackle two topics. One that Heather asked, and then someone else. I apologize to the other person for not seeing your name quickly. Are you seeing less PR agency support for corporate and brand comms PR? I'd be interested in hearing, Brooke and Jessica, what you're seeing in terms of fractional or freelance or consulting being a foot in the door for getting a full-time role. How, with so many comms consultants, no trademark friction intended with Ashley Dennison's group. With so many sorry, it was funnier in my head. With so many comms consultants out there right now that used to be head of comms. You would see like the mixing board has kind of changed a bit, for example, in their structure and who their members are, because so many people used to be at these companies, now they're on their own. How does consulting only keep you in the game? Does it make more connections? Does it make you less desperate because you have like phone just got knocked over? You have income coming in the door, so you can be more patient. How do you see fractional, freelance, and consulting, in the marketplace right now?
I mean, I think consulting is it can always be a good idea. This past year, I placed I had two full-time searches, and they ended up hiring contractors to try out, which were both successful, and it was a way in the door. A benefit was those contractors could start immediately. They could prove their worth, and they could prove their, work and make sure it was a chemistry fit, and they were converted. I think corporations are being smart about how they're using consultants as well. There's a lot of highly skilled consultants on the market who are able to plug in immediate holes, and they are choosing the consulting life, and they're going to have control of their own destiny. So I think, if you're ever in doubt and out of a job and want to try consulting, you absolutely should. It keeps your skills in the game. And also, if you are interviewing for a full-time position, then you have immediate examples as well of your consulting work.
And interviewing and applying for jobs all day will make you go crazy. So by
True.
consulting, it keeps you,
Yes.
I mean, I hate to say it, Dustin, but less desperate, and it keeps you in the game. Also, if I'm ever presenting a candidate who's unemployed, and let's say they've been unemployed for 6 months, and the client asks, what have you been doing for the last 6 months? If your answer is job seeking, that's going to kill you. They're going to be like, well, then why didn't anyone else want to hire this person? I'm not interested. But if you say it was consulting, great. Then you can speak to the consulting work that you've been doing, and you seem more desirable because obviously someone wanted to hire you to do this work. So I think consulting is definitely a great route to take while you're looking for a job versus just job seeking all day.
And Mike, how does that play into companies being able to say, hey, there's less risk here in that labor investment while they're trying to figure out the exact, perfect fit for longevity, something you brought up back in September.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it there. Employment costs are going to be the biggest cost driver on companies, but you can't replace the value of a highly skilled go-getter. So companies are going to be willing to invest, but they're going to be looking for ways to solve what I would call the knowledge problem, right? Which is how do I mitigate the risk that this person's going to be a hit or not a hit when I bring them into this team? And then if they're not a hit, I waste 6 months, then I let them go. Then it's another 6 months of hunting. That is pretty costly. So you see more caution in the hiring or trying to solve the knowledge problem, figure out ways to identify the right person up front, and then make that, maybe you're willing to invest more up front in that way. So there's trade-offs to that. So I thought it's funny, Jessica, the way you put it there, the way you described, if the 6 month gap, how that, I imagine, as human beings, if we see everybody valuing something, we start valuing it. And with my toddlers, it's like the TV remote. They all want the TV remote. If I didn't touch the TV remote, they would leave it there. But because I touched it, they want it. It's the same way with employment, right? If you seem valuable in the marketplace, everyone's going to want you more.
Yes. And that's back to Dustin's point of like writing an op-eds and being quoted. Like if someone sees, they're like, oh, they must be an expert in this space. That's good.
Well, and to your point, Mike, I mean, I was raised by a roofing contractor, and everyone assumes if you're a roofing contractor that you also know how to do windows, doors, and sidings. And if you're in PR, everyone thinks you can do marketing. And if you're in social media, everyone thinks you can do PR. So to your point, being able to be, I think, show that strategic capability on LinkedIn, the ability to get yourself placed, and those two things alone should show a number of skills and capabilities and thought processes. One of the things that we didn't talk, Brooke, about LinkedIn is also show the journey. Make sure that the person reading your post, whether it's a recruiter or the hiring manager, is able to see themselves in your shoes here. So it's not just some idea, but like, oh, this is their strategic mind. This is how they brought in a team member. This is how they worked with the client. Bringing all those pieces together, showing that journey.
Yeah.
We have a number of people asked questions that we're just not going to get to. We only have a few minutes left. So if you want to get your questions answered, I recommend shooting either Brooke or Jessica an email, a DM. Shoot them a DM or maybe tag them in your comment. We'll tackle two things to close out here. The first is Callie asks, can you speak to narrowing down your niche on LinkedIn, eliminating yourself from other niches versus being a jack of all trades? And I think it ties to something Dana asked. For policy communications roles, what skills are required and how do you pivot? I'm always going to advocate for narrowing down. The further that you can be an inch wide and a mile deep, the better off you are. because you're gonna, as Jessica and Brooke talked about, when you have 1,000 resumes, you want to be able to stand out. If they're going to hire you for a lot of money and be as hesitant as Mike is talking about to look for the perfect fit, the less diversified you are, ironically, the better off you will be. Because they will be able to see you in this role doing exactly what they need, and that will be worth the investment. So I'm always going to advocate for dialing into your niche. However you present that is a different question. But I'm always going to advocate for dialing into your niche. And regarding policy, I think the most important thing is going to be able to looking around corners, show that you can say prove that crisis preparation, risk preparation is a bottom line investment because whether it's a tweet from the president of the United States, attacks by terrorists, whether it's tariffs, there are so many risks in policy, especially in I think Brooke, you mentioned highly regulated industries earlier. Um, you have to be able to show that you can look around corners, see what's coming, and be a prevention strategist. Because every time you're in trouble, if your CEO is in front of Congress, you're probably is not the right place for them to be. So the more that you can prevent them from having to waste time, the more valuable you are to the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think the specific question, policy comms, I mean, the general background for policy comms is someone who's worked on the Hill or worked for an elected official or worked on a
Yeah,
campaign, and then
true.
they were an expert in certain issues, and then especially in the tech world, then they pivoted to a tech company, and they were
Mhm.
able to use their expertise on the issues and their connections within the on the Hill and the administration to help tell the communication story. So I think policy comms is a really hard career to pivot into if you've never worked on the Hill or on a campaign. There will be easier pivots.
And by being an expert, it doesn't have to be you're an external comms expert and it prevents you from getting internal comms jobs if that's what you're looking for. Figure out what else it is. Maybe you're an expert at taking companies through M&A. Maybe you're an expert at taking a company public. Maybe you're an expert at divestiture. Whatever it is that doesn't pigeonhole you in the way that you feel like you're going to be pigeonholed, find that expertise and then you can talk about all of the industries and all of the other functions with the main line being M&A. So figure out like what that moment in time in a company, maybe that's your expertise.
That's a really good point. And with my company, right, we're earned media. How many earned media companies are out there? But our differentiator is we fill your gap without a retainer required. That says that we can handle it fast. We can prove we can handle volume, and we're able to not be that expensive 6 month requirement. Those are the real pain points we're solving, which is I think Jessica is what you're talking about. If you're hiring for comms, there's already a baseline pain point that you're trying to solve. How can you discover that specific company's pain point and your specific solutions? Their pain point isn't AI, but AI is part of the solution. They need to know that you can handle it for them specifically. The last thing, speaking of how you can handle things specifically, Michelle asked, which KPIs most credibly demonstrate impact on the business's bottom line, and how do you validate and defend those metrics? Great question. We're going to finish on that one. So everyone else, your questions, great. DM them to our recruiters here because we're not going to have time to get to them. But I think the KPI is really hard in comms. So Jessica and Brooke, what do you see as the ones that end up people when they're prepared, they get it right, that lands them at least at that final interview? And then Mike, from the macro perspective, with so much hesitation, what are bottom line that people can think through as they're trying to, maybe they're a mid-range person who's only been in comms, but they're trying to elevate their ability to think through the business questions.
I mean, the people who are getting the jobs are being they're being ultra prepared in the interview process from start to finish. They are, when they're starting to interview, they're figuring out who their references are. When they get to the reference stage, their references are prepped. Everybody they meet has a true sense of what this person is, who they are, what they want to do with the company, and the impact they can make.
I think it's showing clear growth and movement with stakeholders and shareholders and that target audience and really showing the movement of the needle with corporate reputation, brand visibility. Those are the things that you should be tracking specifically with your shareholders and stakeholders.
Yeah, just I guess from the economic consulting standpoint. So I consult with a variety of different businesses across this U.S. economy every day. Big thing is we're moving. I mean, the same advice I give them, I give to an individual trying to look for a job that's selling themselves. It's what are your, I think, I can't remember if Jessica or Brooke, you guys said it very well earlier in the call. I think you described it differently, but what makes you unique to one of my clients that's running a business? Like, what are your competitive advantages? And for that, what do I mean by that? That's what do you do that's unique that can't be replicated by someone else? Figure that out, highlight it, lean into it, and that's how you're going to stand out in this economy.
And you can't just stand out in the interview process. That's why I think it's going to be really important. We talked about LinkedIn earlier, but being present on LinkedIn, even if it's only once a week, a lot of people I think get scared. But I think if people start reviewing the news every day, pick your 5 trade outlets that are most important in the industry you're targeting, scan them every day. You're going to have ideas. And I think the more that you flex those muscles, I don't think Jessica and Brooke are going to look and say, that was a typo. We're going to hold that against them on LinkedIn. Or, hey, 6 posts ago, they were, a little bland or a little short. Showing that ability to think through, observe the news cycle, and react to it, I would have to think is going to elevate above anyone who's not posting, at the very least.
Yeah, just the negative comments though, that's a turnoff that I'll remember.
Negative comments, what do you mean?
Yeah, so commenting like negatively on people's posts or writing a post and just complaining the whole time, that's something that people will remember. So keep that in mind.
Does that really, of course, we hear about social media posts from 10 years ago impacting people. They've done something illegal or highly unethical. But that really plays a role. Complaining about a client, complaining, even without naming somebody, that's a real negative as a recruiter.
Yes.
Negativity in general, complaining about things, being uber honest, and talking down about people or companies are quite real turnoffs.
Because the number one thing that clients are hiring for is EQ, and doing that on a social business platform shows the lack of EQ.
And I'm glad you both said that because I've had the thought, but again, I'm not an expert on what corporations are looking for. So I think we need to remember here is a lot of the people who go viral for sort of bashing people usually aren't looking for a job. They either have a job, they're semi-retired, they have their own agency, they're relatively secure. So I think we want to make sure that, with the algorithm being what it is, right, it's going to help you go viral and give you a lot of backs, for bashing somebody, but it's not actually going to appeal to your very narrow target audience of someone's going to hire you.
And when we do a social media scrub for our clients and they see that, that could also be the nail in the coffin.
Cool. Well, this was a blast. We've already gone an hour. I could keep going, but I probably have to eat dinner at some point. So Jessica, Brooke, Mike, thank you very much for joining us. Everyone who's watching, thank you. A lot of questions we couldn't get to. So again, tag Brooke, tag Jessica, shoot them DMs. Anyone who's watching wants to do the hiring process, contact Brooke and Jessica too to make sure that you get through their channels and their folks that they're working with. Thank you very much, folks, and have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.